Welcome. This session on Agile contracts in Agile world. My name's Jowanna Conboye, and my colleague Tom. Okay. That's all he's going to say. He's just here for props. So we are, as the secret is out, we are lawyers. We are from Stephens Scown, which is a southwest law firm, operates nationally. We are specialists in intellectual property and IT, with particular experience in Agile contract work. So we're going to be telling you a bit today about why having Agile contracts that reflect the way that you work is really important, and hopefully dispelling some of the myths that have been going around about contract law and contracts are rubbish and all of this kind of thing. We're here to shout for contracts, but we'll tell you why.
So I suppose the first question...
Oh yeah, is my microphone not on? Oh yeah. Oh no, I can't remember what I said.
Hello, I'm Jowanna Conboye.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
So the first, Joe's absolutely right, we're here to sing the praise of the contract. The first question we have to ask you is, what is the point? What is the point?
Yeah.
Okay, there's no blank answer, but it's not the answer I'm looking for. Managing expectations is pretty
Yeah. Covering your ass. But the phrase was cover your ass, which I think is also very close, yeah. Keep you employed for an employment contract. Yeah.
We've got loads of good stuff down here. There's one word missing that I really want to hear somebody say. I know you did, I don't know. Value's a good one. We've got to put those in front space now. Okay. Pardon? Very good.
Yeah. Somebody's read a textbook, yeah? Got it, XP?
About certainty in relation. And that's the purpose of the contract. It doesn't need to be in writing. It doesn't need to have all the sort of frivolities of a long script and forward and through the presentation, which is, for example, where something is suitable. But it does have to have certainty. And I suppose if you think about contract in your day-to-day life, you might think that they're a little bit sort of old school. That's fair question. Contract law goes back to millennia. In this country, we have case law dating back to 500 years. So we take some of the contracts. What's the point? Certainly, when I'm working in that environment, they're old and they're upset with the community. Let me give you an example of a really updated case law. Take you to certain a man who used to call widows, and another man who used to relate to the marriage. 31 in Spain, and a man agrees to have hay litter by the night for 32 shillings a week. The horse turns up every week, and the hay is milling, shillings to the pound, and then you get in the contract. And that's the contract. Horse litter pay. How much pay? What quality is pay? What time of waiting? When you pay before the hay is unloaded, or after hay is unloaded in respect to the quality of the hay. Do you pay in arrears or do you pay up front? Do you pay if there's less hay, or you pay the same amount regardless, and you just pay the pay you need. There was so much uncertainty, the contract was considered non-enforceable. And the purpose of the contract is to put the other party back into the position they would have been had there been no choice. For example, that seems like a relatively straightforward situation. We also see those who have hair, because we're talking about pork, straw, shillings, withers, and one of the things that but actually it's fantastically balanced. And there's just a fair with it when we explain to you why. It's not all of it. Okay?
So, what we're going to take from the straw, horse, men, shillings agreement is we've got a normal services contract, or in that case, a contract for goods and services. So somebody was getting hay and delivery of hay. The hay is the goods and the delivery is the service. So what we're talking about in the Agile world or really in the development world, we're talking about software, or any other kind of supply, is a normal services contract. In the legal world, mostly, if we're talking about anything over a few £100, you're going to have a written contract of some sort, not a handshake. The handshake is important, though, because, as was said, there is trust that needs to be established between parties to do any kind of relationship. So that trust manifests itself, hopefully, in a fair contract that you've talked about in advance. What goes into a normal services contract? Well, we've all seen contracts, but the kind of thing that on any supply of any service, there'll be, okay, what are the parties' obligations? What has customer agreed that they'll do? And what has the supplier agreed that they'll do? And what you've agreed pre-contractually, for instance, saying, I really want to work with you and we want to make this project work and we want it to work like this over a particular period of time, and we want the communication to work like this and we want the delivery to work like this. Well, is that what's written in the contract? So you might agree a whole load of things pre-contractually, and then, and we see this quite often, the contract that you've ended up with, maybe you've just got standard T's and C's, maybe you've downloaded them from the internet, don't do that. And they don't properly reflect the obligations that you have actually agreed. We'll come on to why that's a problem on the next couple of slides. But mainly in a contract, you've got obligations. You've also got payment, so money. No point doing anything really, is there, unless you're going to get paid for it. Well, I mean, it depends on your worldview. But if talking about contract law, people are usually getting paid, or there's an exchange. So I'm doing something for you and you're doing something for me. And that usually is, I'm supplying you with something for payment. You're going to pay me. There's other underlying things around payment, such as not just what is the price, but when am I going to get paid, how often. If I'm in a group company, maybe this group company is going to get paid for this particular thing, this other company is going to get paid for doing this other thing. So what are the payment terms? Almost all of you will have been agreeing payment terms. You don't need a written contract in the sense that you think of it like a 20-page legal document to agree payment terms. They are agreed. Otherwise, you can't do anything. Quite often, you can't do anything unless you get payment up front for a particular bit of the project. So obligations, payments, that's all what happens as the contract's going along and everyone's friends. What about when people fall out? We need to have a plan for what happens when people fall out. And that's termination provisions. So how do we really don't want to work. The project either isn't working or it's worked perfectly and we've come to the end of our working life together for this particular reason. Termination. How do you terminate? Do you agree a fixed term at the beginning and then terminate just at that point when the project is finished? Or do you work together forever until you fall out? And they're two totally different contractual terms. There's obviously really accepted things, I'm sure you've all got this already in your contract, you said confidently, about what happens if the other party has some issues with paying. So some kind of insolvency or not being able to pay its debts. There's lots of long history of case law, which we won't go into at this point. But that's kind of established that you can terminate on that. But you do have to agree that in advance. So have you agreed that in advance? Have you agreed that if you don't get paid on time or if the other party suddenly stops being able to pay its debts, that you can end the contract? That's what we would normally agree in a full service contract. Other points that are a little bit more archaic, and there was a very good question in the previous session about plain English, other contracts, other elements of the contract that we would absolutely expect to see in a normal services contract are force majeure. Does everyone know what force majeure is? Let's spell it out. Yes, exactly. An act of God is force majeure. Force majeure generally is an event outside your control. And that's how it's put in consumer contracts. You'll see that next time you have a consumer contract for iTunes or whatever. Force majeure is still really, really relevant because whatever your business, if there's an act of God, if your office gets flooded, well, that's not relevant, lawyer, because we will work remotely. Okay, what if there's a cyber attack? What if the communications network goes down? That's not your fault. You need to have some provision in the contract for why you shouldn't be obliged to carry on providing the services and why the customer shouldn't have to pay you, or in the other way around, depending whether you're a customer or supplier, if a force majeure event happens, an event outside your control. And then finally, and really, really importantly, is jurisdiction. Have you agreed what law is going to apply? So you've got a project, you're going to work together, you've got the payments, you know how it's going to end, you've agreed that there's some events outside your control where you won't be obliged to provide the service. But what law applies? That's not automatic. So you can actually agree any jurisdiction you want. If you're based in England, if you're based in Britain, you probably want to go for the law of England and Wales for convenience, because then you can go to a lawyer down the road if you need to. You can choose any other country. So say you've got developers in Ukraine and your customers are in Japan. Well, you can choose Ukraine or Japan or England and Wales. Parties from across the world choose the law of England and Wales as the law that applies because it is business friendly. The law doesn't want to intrude on your business agreement. And England and Wales the law here, tries to protect what they think the parties agreed at the time. And if there's a written contract, that's much easier to do. I think these are crystals. Yeah. No. So what we need to do is find a way to draft into a contract the certainty that the law likes, but keep it reflective of agile practice. And that is where the difficulty arises. What we have in a normal service contract is what is effectively fixed price, fixed scope. In a development world, you have a specification, and that is fully documented and agreed at the beginning. Payments are at particular points in time, or nothing until the end, or half up front, or whatever it might be. That is certain. The law likes that. We know what's going to be provided. We know what you've agreed to do. We know how much it is. Fine. In Agile, when part of the whole point of working in an Agile way is to get to the best answer, not do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this way, how do you do that in a contract? That's the problem. Yeah, how do you do that in a contract? Here's the question. Well, actually, yeah. How do you think you do that in a contract? I'm going to be telling you later. So like a time and materials basis, absolutely, that absolutely comes into it, yep. Yeah, so for more integrated methods of those sort of standalone clauses, so payment and obligations is how we do it, but exactly, so story points more regularly, that's easier, yep. Sorry. Outcome based. That's the problem. So if you do, Yeah, I know. And we have to remember that the law comes from that old book that we saw and the hay, and that is the basis that we're working on. So doing it on a concept basis, it is actually how you do it on an agile way, but there are some fundamental little bits that have to complete the puzzle in order for it to be certain enough. And one of the things is, if you agree conceptually what's going to be done, what is done? What's the definition of done? How do you agree how many acceptance tests are going to be done? All things that you wouldn't normally put, actually, in a normal service contract. You said something at the front here, sorry. Yes, so you can have, and this is one of the things that came out to anyone who was at Paul's session before, you can do things like proof of concept or small-scale projects. You can have a framework agreement and then so a framework agreement that gives the overall terms and then individual project work. That is absolutely a way you can do it, but that still doesn't reflect agile working, not really, because even within all of those little contracts, you have to have certainty of price and certainty of scope and certainty of what's going to be delivered. Yeah. 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 Perfect. You can absolutely do that. So all of these things you can do in the contract. All of these things that we talk about, a contract isn't just one thing. It's a mix and match, pick and mix, do it however you actually work, has to reflect that in the contract. The rolling contract idea is really interesting and certainly would be agile the way that you've described it. It's very customer attractive, I would say, but probably less supplier attractive because of where's your commitment? Where's your thing of saying, I can plan for the next 6 months. I know how many developers I'm going to need. I know how much money I'm going to need to invest in this if it's that rolling. So that's the risk. And that's what you do in pre-contractual negotiations is you say, well, we're going to put this much commitment and you're going to put this much. And maybe on a rolling contract basis for a quick termination, you charge them a lot more because of the need to plan and it being costing that much money. But that's really all the specifics. The main point is getting certainty is quite difficult. We'll be going through the specific agile things that have to be present in the contract in order for it to be certain. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. So the question is, what do you have to be certain about? Well, yeah. What do we have to be certain about in order for it to be a legally binding contract? Okay, so we know we're not going to do fixed price, fixed scope, and we're not going to have time of the essence to deliver the final project. Maybe if you want flexibility in that, which you probably do, you have to be certain enough on a legal frame for a judge to understand what has been agreed. And I'll tell you how to do that in the next couple of slides. There's one more very important general contractual principle before we get into the nitty-gritty.
The contract is clear. That's hopefully what we understood from what Sarah and I have been saying. One of the key purposes and the format is very well specification. Your contract isn't solved with what you're saying. Because as well as a lot of terms and conditions, you operate on with your clients, and your customers, and your service, and your business. That's right. It isn't a sole source policy. It isn't a sole source production issue. It's not going to get over the issues between things that are in relationship between or the partners you work. What it will do is it will protect. It will ensure that there are issues like IP ownership and tax work issues on credit conversation that need to be sought that you probably pick apart and reverse by your contract. You don't want to sign a certificate like knowledge, for example. You don't want termination and unemployment. So your contract is your shield.
The other advantage of contract that certainly works as a shield going forward is that a contract that properly reflects how you work raises that conversation with the client or with the supplier, depending what side you're on, at a very, very early stage. It is a help to pre-contractual negotiations. if you discuss those terms very early. So you've got a written set of T's and C's, potentially, or you might need a bespoke contract for every project you do. But you discuss those terms right at the beginning. And that means that everyone is on the same page around the obligations, around termination, around payment, around why we're working together at all.
I know we're in the presentation.
Yeah. Okay.
Thing called Tom's toxic. I just thought it was weird.
Very good, yeah, get it, yeah.
Your contract should never come as a surprise to the other party that's been signed. It should be part of exactly what you said. It should be one of the first things that's discussed. It's a fluid document to discuss, especially when you've got schedules which should be plain and easy language schedules. You're probably right. If we can write law, we can protect you. Law can't do your job, just as you can't do it. That's obviously the other. Yeah, that's what we're saying. But the idea is that contract shouldn't be over by the law. It should form part and parcel of the
Got it.
Just take your thing. Pretty safe. You want to get it really safe?
Yeah. No, it's too easy. It is too easy. So, I don't think you know what I'm saying. Yeah. There's no words, or there's no law, there's no nothing. Sorry about that. So, if we go back to that, think about that handshake in the normal services contract. The normal services contract loves waterfall. We've got milestones, we know what's happening at what stage. That is fine for development. What is very interesting is you don't have to have a purely agile contract if you want that waterfall framework. So maybe you work with customers that just won't take agile, you work internally agile, but they want you to agree definites. Like a tender, yeah. So anything, so where something is, you have to do it this way, or you have to do this by this particular time. Well, you can have an overlying waterfall where you say, oh, well, we'll do this, this, and this. But underneath that, the way that you work together, the particular types of delivery within all of those milestones in between can be agile. So just because there might be waterfall elements to a particular agreement with a particular customer, doesn't mean the whole contract has to be back at that non-reflexive normal service contract. So, oh yeah, go on, yeah. This is the elements that you need in an agile contract to truly reflect agile practice. What do you think this is? Oh, it does look like a framework. It's not a framework. Vision. Very good. No way would I have got that. So, you do need to stay with the project vision. This is where the conceptual point comes in. You have to have something. You have to agree something. Why are you working together? What are you trying to do at all? Obviously, lawyers are going to say the more detailed you can be about the project vision, the better. Well, but then, from a development point of view, the less detailed you are about the project vision, the better, because you can't be held to deliver something that you haven't said that you want to deliver. So, it's an art, and it'll depend on how your business works overall, as to how you want to describe the project vision, but there has to be one. There has to be a reason that you're working together, and you have to put that in the contract. Never hear the end of this, do you?
Your lawyer has to understand that probably better if they will do
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yes. That's what I would expect. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what I would expect from a product vision. And it doesn't, again, the more prescriptive you are about the product vision, the closer you're going to a waterfall type contract, even if the obligations are going to be more agile. So you can do it however you want, but the rest of the contract has to match it. So that's why it's important. Either you can say, we aim to get this. We want an app that does this. or we want these 5 things. Just, you can pick either of those, but the rest of the contract has to match that. I would expect it to be more aim-based. Yeah? Yeah, so I would expect the customer's lawyers to know, and you're absolutely right. That's where it comes from, because they're commissioning the service. So we need something. You know what that something is as the customer, and you tell the supplier. That's how the conversations start. Well, how that conversation goes, the lawyer needs to understand, and you have to bear with us most of the time because we are, old school. Yeah, so it's that. And the reason, unfortunately, there's two reasons to have this really clear at the beginning. One is so the parties know what they've agreed. And the other, equally important, is if there's a dispute and you put it in front of a judge, will a judge understand? So that's why it's formulated in that particular way. So, you need to describe the sprints in your contract. Length, how it works with user stories, points, testing, all of that has to be detailed in an Agile contract. Because you haven't got certainty on deliverables, you haven't got, we're going to deliver this at this time, then we're going to deliver that, you have to be much more detailed about how the contractual relationship works. What is the project going to look like on a daily basis? It has to be that granular. Yep, absolutely, yep. There'll be a full schedule of what the team is on both sides, so who's the product owner, who's the team developing it, who's doing the testing, how long they're going to, it depends, but some choose to go into as much detail as these people are going to be exclusively on this project, these people are going to be 50% on this project. So yeah, absolutely. One at the back. Oh no, so if that's the way that you work, so if you work on a sprint basis, that's what has to be. Yeah, so you have to, yeah. How you define user story, how you define the project, so user stories and acceptance, what acceptance testing means, what the definition of done is, how many tests until it's accepted, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah. No. So, yeah, very, very good question. What you would usually have is a fail-safe in the contract. So you say, at the beginning of the project, we're going to have 2-week sprints. If these conditions are met, then we might be reducing it. Or it will be, more developer-friendly, it's in the, at the exclusive, or at the, probably can't be, yeah. So it can be in the exclusive decision or sole discretion of the supplier as to drop the length of the sprint. What you would usually want is to do it on agreement, because actually on a project, you're going to be talking all the time. But you need that flexibility in the contract. Yeah, you can say that. There's a variation way to say it. The most important thing is there has to be some certainty at the beginning. You're going to know what the sprint length at least is at the beginning. You're going to know, do you work on Scrum basis? Whatever you know, you're certain of at the beginning. Otherwise, it's not a binding contract. That's the problem. It's because from a legal point of view, we're going from a delivering hay on a day a week for this amount of month to something completely different. We're going to work together on a project and we don't know what, so the law sees it, you don't know what you're going to do. So how do you show, if you fall out, how do you show what the terms were agreed at the beginning? Because and that's really one of the main reasons to have a contract. Yes, you should be talking about it with your client, and it shows that you're professional to have a professional drafted contract. But if you fall out, how do you establish what was agreed? Yeah, absolutely. And that's the difference between building and development on an agile basis. Because you can be certain in a building contract, you can just say time materials, we're going to work for this long, and we're going to do this, and you're going to pay us this much. Well, you tell me, how would it work? What would be the problem in doing that? I'm just going to say... Yeah. Yeah. You build a house or you build a something. Yeah. That's the point really, is you can treat it like cleaning services. We want this cleaned, like we want development for this amount of time. That is probably fine for the developer in the sense that they're going to get paid, and as long as they work, that's it. But what if you don't deliver what the agreement was? Just aim towards this thing. Well, proof of concept is a particular type of contract. So if you're saying we want to see if this thing works, you do a proof of concept. And that's a particular type of contract. Yeah. 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 That's the number one basis of dispute for this kind of software development, is because people don't agree what was actually meant to have been done. And that's what an agile contract will help you do. You don't have to say where you're going to get to. You don't have to say it's a thing that's going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the whole point of not doing it that way. But you are saying we're going to work towards to get to this thing, and then we're going to agree what we're doing in each of these time slots, and you're going to accept them. And that's what the agreement is. Or you have a mix and match. Yeah. Oh, you don't have to. If that's the way you work, you don't have to have it like that. The sprint example is, if you work in sprints, that's what you have to put in the contract. If you don't work in this way, then what's in the contract is actually how you work. Yeah. Yeah. The point also is time and materials is payment and time estimate in the contract. But what about the obligations? So you can definitely agree a time and materials basis, but that isn't the whole. That's not the whole contract. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
including between the contract, it's just a legal expectation. Because unlike the person who can back first, before that,
Yeah.
much more to do with free.
Yeah.
But I still have agency, and I would still want to have an expectation of my £1,000
Yeah.
doing certain things on certain occasions.
Yeah.
And so, having done this kind of everyone, so
Mm.
time material, so in the end, if you don't work for the customer, so you go into it, right? So that's the kind of, because how is the customer protected from actually, like if they say, no, you're rubbish, get out of here. You know, obviously
Yeah.
following the methodology, and then they're saying, you say the same, and not.
That is the conversation you need to have at the beginning. And that is what needs to be reflected in the contract. What actually goes into the contract is a myriad of different ways that reflect how you actually work and what the customer expects of you. The way, from a customer's point of view, to bind suppliers is to hold them to the highest standards possible with enough certainty on what they're actually going to be doing. So that's product vision, and then we're just going to be working on time materials until we get to this point, and then we'll talk about it, and then we'll test it, and then if it fails, we test this, and if it doesn't, we carry on to the next stage, or some variation of that. But it's how you work that needs to be reflected in the contract. Thank you. Yeah. 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 No. And the only reason I say that with a severe no is because a true partnership means that the people in the partnership have equal responsibility for all the liabilities of the partnership. It's like a business. And that's usually not what people want unless you want a joint venture company to do a whole new project. Collaboration agreement is probably the closest thing. There's a legal document called a collaboration agreement, where you work on a project to get to a particular aim, is probably the closest thing to an agile development agreement. It's still a contract, it's just the terms. Yeah. There's nothing you can absolutely be collaborative and change the goalposts all the way through a project. You just have to have the permission at the beginning to do that if you don't want to get into trouble. Yeah. 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 It depends on your attitude to risk. So what usually happens is people vary contracts by email and just agree, okay, well, we're not going to do this at this point, we're going to do it at this point instead. And that's fine. If your permission to vary contracts by email is in the contract at the beginning. Blah, blah. Or you do a proper contractual variation, which is like a whole just extra page. Yeah, and that's what it links in quite nicely with the how you estimate at the beginning. What are we actually doing? How far are we going to go down this little black hole? Yeah. Should we do the rest of the slide?
Very, very quickly then.
If you boom. If you work in the Scrum method, that has to go in the contract. That is what it is. So stream program or continuous delivery or whatever, however else you do it, that is the way that you have to describe it in the contract. This is the best one. Yes? I won't tell him you said that. Yeah, I won't tell him.
With intellectual property, would be one of the key aspects of any outcome from any contract, whether it's one or otherwise. And obviously, if you've got the parties working together, that's even more important because assets, right? The whole purpose of the contract is to find who owns what, where, why, when, who can do what with what. We've got a licensing case, the first license. You get transactions complicated, but really no need. So the contract needs to be explicitly clear about who owns what and how. And who gets the license. And these will be defined in the card with license too. So it's royalty that tends to make our vote. And you come full circle. They're all boys. All do agree. Sure. We get paid slightly more respectively to things, and sometimes there's certainty, sometimes there isn't. But it's the same outcome. You have to have certainty in the legal. The best way to do that is to have a written contract. It's approach to the written offer, as we rightly discussed. So how you explain what the offer is. Good luck. There's also a lot of hard work. Before explaining that actually spending that time searching and having something that is 10% safe, and maybe he was able to amend himself, which is fantastic. It goes down and doing frankly not spending too much time on work, which can be better, because the last 50 minutes is 7. And you haven't even been charged for that. So imagine if you're paying stuff every single time, come back and you look at the contract, and I'll go, I've got a question, why is it £25? So if you've got something that you can work with, and you can adjust yourself, and you're happy with, and using your language, and your client understands, it isn't that stuff. It sounds good old fashioned. And that's what I'm going to do now.
There's one more. That was your joke about that's me being a ballerina.
Oh, sorry. That's me being a ballerina. Questions? And legally required. Everything you just say is different in the past.
Let you read.
So in terms of having clarity in the way of working with the contract, and the point around respecting that and changing that, does that mean we need to go back to our lawyers and local agents to get the contract rewritten and pay you guys commission?
Unless you... Oh, commission. Oh, yeah. Rather than normal fee. The only, I would say, get terms and conditions, so a base contract that represents how you work. Understand which bits of those are the flexible bits that you change on discussion with your customers. And only go and, well, talk to your lawyers as much as you want, but the only reason that you would need to go back and significantly change what you've got is if you significantly change how you work. Any good contract that you get from a lawyer should have lots of different options around IP ownership, around scope, around payment, timings, all of that. Yeah. With the customer. How well is the contract written? Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. And it's the risk about whether you want that level of flexibility.
There is a danger of I don't want to do this anymore. And that's what it's done. So, you're here speaking to the conservative. How does this segmentation go down amongst your colleagues or non-business people when you're talking about it? Yeah, here's the format. Yeah. The 5 why? I do like that. So it's basically that. People like to drill down with exactly why they say like they say. This is the right word. The fact you're in the group, things you buy, you do understand the importance. And there are so many businesses that say, and there are so many businesses that you understand the difference between this one and
and they come to us when there's a problem, rather than at the beginning. Your point is to avoid a dispute. avoid any legal argument at all. The better your contract is, the more likely you are to avoid an argument. Oh yes, absolutely. So that level, yeah, absolutely. All of that detail of the relationship, of how you're going to talk, how you're going to meet, how you're going to have those meetings, that's all detailed in there as well. Yes, absolutely. And that's an obligation that they're engaged. No. And the reason is because just in this room of this few people, how many different methods of working have we encountered just in this discussion? So, templates generally, if you're doing something really, really simple, is fine. A template confidentiality agreement, for instance, if you just want to keep things confidential, probably fine. This level of complexity around the certainty, it's a good idea to get a bespoke contract. But if you find a good one, send it to us. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, right, okay. Yeah, we've got one, but whether it's available for free, I don't, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so plain English is very, very interesting, and the whole point of the contract is it should be absolutely clearly understood by the supplier and the customer. And the schedules are really where plain English comes into its own. You could have there are lots of clauses that will be the same on whatever contract it is. So it's the front half of the contract and the schedule that will be bespoke to what you're doing. So yes and no is correct. Thanks very much, everybody.